Facing the Storm. Isabel Moreno sat carefully inserting papers into a folder. She had been at the Gateway Nature Center's office all morning and was weary of filing. She wanted desperately to work with the animals, especially the injured birds that the center rehabilitated. But her mom, who was the assistant director of the center, said Isabel was too young and there was no time to supervise her. "I've been a weekend volunteer this whole school year," Isabel thought. "I know more about birds than almost anyone here," she said to herself with conviction, recalling as evidence the extensive research she had done reading books and websites on natural history. Then she sighed. She had never been good at speaking up for herself, and who would listen to a shy seventh grader anyway? Suddenly the quiet was shattered by Amy Jensen bursting in and letting the door slam. Isabel felt herself shrink. Amy, who had been a volunteer a bit longer than Isabel, was 16 and strutted around like she owned the place. "Hey, Isabel, I've got a job for you," she barked, planting a hand on Isabel's shoulder. Isabel recoiled from Amy's touch, but she willed herself to remain still. "Don't make trouble," she reminded herself, though she would have loved to brush Amy's hand off. "I have to finish this filing," she squeaked feebly. Just then Isabel's mother rushed into the room with Mr. Garza, the custodian. "The hurricane forecast for Miami has skewed to the south and is entering the Gulf," Mrs. Moreno reported. "We should be okay up here in the inlet, but we'll likely get some fierce and persistent winds. I've sent the other volunteers home, but I need you girls to help Mr. Garza get the storm shutters down in here and in the aviary. Then I'll take you home." Isabel leaped to her feet, excited to have an opportunity to help the birds. Mrs. Moreno's cell phone jangled, and she answered it at once, listening intently. "Change of plans," she announced as she hung up. "The winds are worse than expected along the coastline, so the Gulf Shore Preserve needs help preparing for the storm. I've got to go down there with the staff. We'll take the inlet bridge, so we shouldn't be gone long. Stay inside with Mr. Garza after you get the storm shutters down. And call me on my cell if there are any problems," she directed as she dashed out. Amy crowed that she was now in charge. Isabel groaned inwardly, but said nothing. Mr. Garza and the girls worked quickly and were soon back inside, listening to the wind batter and rattle the shutters. When Mr. Garza found an emergency weather report on the computer, a worried expression crossed his face. "A storm surge is heading our way, right up the inlet," he announced. "We're in for some flooding." Authoritative as ever, Amy called Isabel's mother to tell her the news, but she sounded flustered when she hung up. "The surge has flooded the bridge, and they're stuck there," she gasped. "What do we do?" Isabel was unnerved that both Mr. Garza and Amy seemed so panicked, but after silently considering the dilemma for a few seconds, she roused herself and said calmly, "We should move the birds to the reptile house. It's on higher ground." As she strode out of the building with Mr. Garza and Amy following, she caught a glimpse of the satellite image on the computer. The vastness of the storm nearly filled the entire Gulf now. Once inside the aviary, Isabel watched Amy lunge from cage to cage, agitating the birds. "Don't jump around so much," Isabel instructed. "They're scared enough as it is, and your sudden movements aren't helping." Amy meekly calmed down, but she was shaking. "Just think about the birds," Isabel said as they carried each cage up to the reptile house. The hawks screeched and beat their wings when they felt the wind. Isabel spoke soothingly to them, and they soon grew calmer. Amy watched in awe and tried to mimic Isabel's tone. Just as the water in the birdhouse had risen to their shins, they finished relocating the birds and waited inside the reptile house for the storm to subside. After several hours, the water had receded, and Mrs. Moreno was able to return to the center. She expressed concern that she'd left them alone for so long, but Mr. Garza reassured her that Isabel's foresight and cool thinking had saved the birds. Mrs. Moreno gazed at her daughter admiringly. "How did you summon such confidence and courage?" she asked Isabel. "I'm not sure," Isabel admitted. "All I could think about was how scared the birds must have felt in their cages, and I just took charge." "I'm proud of you, Isabel," said Mrs. Moreno. Isabel paused a second. "I guess I'm proud of myself, Mom."